Song for the Imps. How about a song for the Imps? There we go, then. Come on, let's get some of the lads together. Let's have a good old sing song, yeah. Okay, yeah, all right. Come on, fellas. Get around the piano. Come on, let's have a good go. Come on, then. Are you ready? Come on, you lot. Go on, then. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Lincoln City are the team, the Radiance is their name. Stinsel Bank is their home ground and football is their game. So come and cheer them on, you lads, support them all the way. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The Imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our...
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a special live Stacey West podcast. In a minute, I shall be joined by one of our regular presenters to talk through today's news. But if you are just joining, our search for a head coach is over after 26 days of looking. Michael Skubala has been appointed Lincoln City's head coach. He didn't appear on the bookies' odds at all during the process. He has come from literally nowhere in the public space. But I think in football spaces, he's a name that people are quite familiar with. We'll go back over everything in a minute, but the press release has just come out. We've got some quotes from Michael. So for those who don't know, Michael Skubala was the Leeds under-21 coach. He's got a really interesting background that we're going to go through in a real short while. He says, it feels great to be here. It's been a really warm welcome. I'm looking forward to getting going. I've been there for a couple of games in the past few weeks, and I've seen how important the fans are for the young players and how they can push the team. I'm really excited to work hard with the players every day to meet the fans and be a part of Lincoln City. I feel something here that I felt when I moved to Leeds, which is how important the supporters can be to the club. Very supporter-centric. Those quotes. City Chairman Clive Nate said, we've been tracking Michael for some time as he is one of the most exciting young coaches in the game right now and had a robust recruitment process to ensure he was the right person for us at this time. We had a list of 15 coaches we thought would be a good fit, and Michael impressed as we went through the interviews. The warm wishes from Leeds United show how respected and popular he was there. We see this as a progressive appointment. Michael shares our ethos on player development, style of play and ambition. He has a clear vision for how he implements this and a track record of developing talented young players. We're also really pleased that Tom Shaw will stay as a key part of the coaching structure as assistant head coach. He's a highly capable coach, and both we and Michael believe he will bring some strong continuity and support to the head coach. So let's bring in not my guest, my partner for the evening, not in that way. He's Charlie Beeston. Look, all right, Charlie, first we'll go through his kind of career in a minute and just give people watching on a little bit of insight into that. But what's your initial thoughts?
Look, initially, it's glad that we've finally got somebody through the door. He's now got a week working with the lads before Stevenage, and there is a big kind of future ahead for him. But this is a really progressive appointment. Clive said it himself. Now, okay, it might not be a name that's known that widely in terms of fan circles, but we were never necessarily going to go for somebody like that, somebody with a big reputation of managing for years and years in the Championship or anything like that. We're the sort of club that will always go for something maybe seen as a little bit out there, but someone who is really respected in the footballing circles, and that's exactly what it seems like we've done here.
Yeah, definitely. I think we have to be careful when comparing one coach to another coach. But obviously, when Mark Kennedy came in, although he had got the football background, he kind of the coaching element of what he had done was kind of from left field as well. With that in mind, this is a little taste of where Skubala has been and what he's done. And let's face it, some people leaked his name earlier on the internet, so I think that there was. Some people may already be aware of that, but for those who are watching on, he's been a youth coach at Nottingham Forest. He's been a youth coach at Coventry City. He was then head coach of Great Britain Universities, who he took to the World Games, I believe, in 2011 and won a silver medal, losing in the final to Japan. Happened to notice a lot of the Japanese team have actually gone on to be professional footballers, whereas the England university teams have not. This is really interesting, and this is something I think we're going to talk about in depth. He then had 3 years as the England Futsal head coach and technical director. Now, I want to talk about that because that's quite fascinating for me.
Yeah.
He was a UEFA football advisor. He was then the England men's national coach under 18s, so England national coach under 18s. He joined Leeds United in 2022 as head coach when Mark Jackson moved to Milton Keynes. He was the interim manager for 3 games, securing a 2-2 draw with Manchester United in his opening game, I believe, losing 2-0 in the second one, I think, with far better XG, by the way. And then he's been their assistant head coach since the new manager came in. So he's got a really...
Yeah, he really hasn't. I think the biggest thing, like you actually say, is probably that time in the futsal sort of system. And we will go on to very much kind of break that down. But look, the time with Leeds, he's obviously really respected there. They've kept him in when there's actually been quite a lot of changes at Leeds over the past kind of, 18 months. He did really, really well with the under-21 setup. He got them promoted from the sort of second tier of Premier League 2 up to the top tier. So he's obviously already got some kind of pedigree. Yes, okay, it isn't senior football, but a lot of these things are still comparable. And I think it was one of the things that Clive said in the comments that he made. The fact that they're wishing him so well and, that they're sending a lot of kind of plaudits over his way, it's a really positive step for us. And obviously they'll be sad to miss him.
Yeah, so first of all, before we kind of move on to what type of coach he is and that sort of thing, we've had some of the comments coming through there. James Christopher said, evening, very well regarded at Leeds, a good choice from the lists I've seen. And there's a theme here from people who support Leeds or know people from Leeds. Dean Wagstaff said, just as had a message from Spug's best mate's dad, and that's his son, who's a Leeds fan. He says he's a top bloke, could be missed at Thorpe Arch. Did that say? Yeah, Thorpe Arch. Johnny Dalton, all right, Johnny, a friend who is a Leeds fan, speaks very highly of him. Great man management skills, apparently. And I'm shocked that Cornell thinks it's a brilliant appointment because Cornell's usually, he always errs on the side of caution. So that's really nice to see. Look, let's pick apart a little bit. Let's go into this futsal because the first thing that people are going to do tonight when we're talking about Michael Skubala, they're going to go on Wikipedia and they're going to start digging away. They could, of course, go back to my article on October the 20th where I touted him as one of the outsiders, several weeks before. Anyone.
Did you?
I did, yeah. I should have mentioned that.
You should.
Times. But yeah, the futsal. Now, futsal it's kind of like a 5-a-side type game, I think, isn't it? But what I find really interesting is that there are a lot of coaches in Portugal, in Spain, in Brazil, who have got a futsal background. There are a lot of players who come out of Brazil and places like that have got a futsal background. On the continent, it's very much seen as a string to the bow within the football coaching community. Whereas over here, it's not, and it's a little bit alien. And I just wonder if I think this is a really interesting element because it's going to lean into his style of play. I was watching some coaching videos a little bit earlier and some of his sort of passing moves, some of his drills, all about tight control. Again, what are your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. I see it as a really positive thing, this time in the futsal sort of space. And I'm not going to pretend like I know much about the game of futsal in this country, as I'm sure many people watching don't either. But it just shows that he's got a really strong level of adaptability. The fact that he's able to coach the futsal team and be part of the coaching team, where they did actually do quite well in certain parts as well. And he was spoken of really, really highly by the other coaches and in that whole kind of system, they all spoke really highly of him. The fact that he was able to do that there, then go on to Leeds under-21s and do it there as well. There's clearly this level of adaptability that he's able to show off, that his skills aren't just set in one particular area. He's not simply a coach that has to be able to buy the best players, have the fastest wingers or all of this. He's somebody that's able to adapt to whatever he's got in front of him. He's already shown that in his career. The fact that then we've managed to bring him in, yes, okay, we've got a strong squad, we know that, but there are probably a couple of areas in this squad where maybe we are a little bit weaker. Obviously, we already know there are injury situations at times as well. So the fact, by the looks of it, he's going to be able to adapt and get this team firing, hopefully, is a real positive because he's already shown that he's able to do that in a couple of different spheres.
Yeah, definitely. Now I'm going to go back a little bit further, and look, I don't. I'm going to pick apart some of the bits, some of what's going to be criticism. I think there'll be some people who will want some questions answering. I don't want this to look like we're coming out and we're just going to be sycophantic, etc., etc. It is an interesting appointment, but with any appointment, it's only as good. You can only judge how good it is in 6 months or 12 months' time. But it is incredibly interesting. Now, I want to pick up his spell with the university. So he's Great Britain University's head coach for 3 years. I read some interesting pieces there. I think that he worked with a guy called James Ellis. The universities went off to the World Games. They weren't expected to do anything at all. They were in a group with Japan, who were the winners. They came through that. They beat South Korea. They beat Brazil. Now, this isn't like the World Cup or even the Olympics, where you've got kind of the professional players there. These are, quite often players who are not going to go on to professional level there. They're within the sporting sphere, and there's some really interesting comments from the vice captain, whose name escapes me, but I do have it written down somewhere, and I will see if I can see it quickly. No, I cannot. But yeah, there's some interesting comments from the vice captain about they were playing brilliant. Scott McGubbin playing brilliant systems. Everyone bought into the process. They did an unbelievable job of making us we could beat those teams. Patrick Bamford, I think, has said, I did found another article where Patrick Bamford spoke highly of his man management skills. Is that interesting, given the reasons that it looks like Mark Kennedy may have departed?
I think it's huge. Not just the man management side, but also the sort of progression of youth as well. Both of those two aspects are very much things that we believe are part of the reason that Mark Kennedy was let go almost a month ago now. So again, we've brought in somebody that's able to be strong in the areas that actually it seemed like Mark Kennedy was actually quite weak. So yeah, that is obviously a little bit of a change, but it's a change for the better. It's a positive change. Some of the sort of comments that were made by people. There's an Athletic article, and I very much implore anybody to read into it, all on his background, because it's really, really interesting. And one of the big kind of things that was coming out of that was he's never going to just shout at a player and demand that a player do something. He wants a player to understand why it's being done. He wants to have the conversations with the players consistently. Look, here's what we want you to do, but what we need you to understand is why we're wanting you to do it. So it's not just about demanding that a player do something, because players are human. They don't want to just have to listen to being told what to do consistently. But if they're understanding the process and they're understanding why, they're going to buy into it, which is obviously the comment that was made by the vice captain. And I think that's something that hopefully we'll be able to see going forward, especially if we're getting a slightly different philosophy of football than what we maybe have done for the past 18 months. I think then on top of that, it also it kind of throws the ball into the court of the young players. Because what it says to all young players, and we have got quite a young squad, it says to them, look, we're going to give you the opportunity. We're going to tell you what to do. We're going to give you the tools. We're going to give you the opportunity then to show us that you can do it. We're going to teach you why we're doing it. It's a learning process for them and us. So it looks like it's going to work in sort of both ways in a really, really positive way to obviously actually support Skubala as a head coach and then support our players moving forward so that we're growing together. Because yes, we are a progressive club. The ambition is to get to the championship. This season, maybe bit of a stretch. Who knows? We might get players. I'm not going to speculate on that. But it's about the process moving forward, and there's a clear ambition from us. And hopefully Skubala's now seeing that same ambition, even if it isn't the traditional ambition, as he's often quite a humble guy. He's not an arrogant, ambitious, I know what I want, I'm going to get it. He's more of I know what I want, but I actually just want to be able to work to get there, not just get there on the shortcut.
No, I want to answer this from Ben Scott. So Ben is one who he won't be in the minority here, but he says clearly he needs to be given time. But this is so left field it almost doesn't make any sense. Which I'll pick. Overall, I'll answer your question, Ben, but I'm going to come to each point in this in turn, if that's okay. Our insistence on a method and style of play will be our downfall. What we needed as a club, as a manager, to unite the supporters, instill passion, bring back crowds, and get Lincoln City back to where we were. Which I don't think has ever really been above ninth in League One in my lifetime. But I'm not. So there we go. Yeah, the opinion's the opinion. Such a disappointing appointment. Okay, clearly he needs to be given time. Yes, I get that. I'm not sure it's entirely left field. And I go back to my article on October the 20th, that when you were looking at what the club want to do and the kind of the direction that we want to take, I don't think it is left field. It's left field because it isn't one of the names that's been up on the betting for 6 months. It's because it's not Carl Robinson, it's not Liam Richardson, etc. But I don't think it was ever going to be kind of a name that we knew in that respect. Des Buckingham was mentioned. He was somebody that I think was particularly interesting. There was a couple of others. And where we say our insistence on a method and a style of play, again, I'm not sure that's the case. But people use the method as sometimes a stick to beat the club with. And I think that it's not a method that's specific to us in terms of the developing young players, in terms of the trying to, bring players on to sell. We're looking into the future and saying, if we don't do this as a club, we are going to regress. And in terms of a style of play, well, actually, Michael Appleton's style of play, possession, attack, one method, and Mark Kennedy's style of play, no possession, defend, we're actually at polar opposites. So I'm not entirely sure there is a particular style of play. I think the one thing that we won't do, and it's probably the one thing that people may believe, and I'm not saying this is Ben, but what people may think is, isn't it better to get the big number 9 to go long to him, etc., etc., etc. Again, I'm not putting any words in Ben's mouth. I'm not sure if that's the case. I certainly don't want to play to say that. So that's just to pick that apart. Sorry, Charlie, you have to bear with me. So Ben said, we'd love to hear my honest thoughts. Am I in any way disappointed or underwhelmed by this? Okay, so here are my honest thoughts. To a degree, Michael Skubala wouldn't have been my first choice to come in as a head coach at Lincoln City. Over the weekend, I got quite excited about Des Buckingham. But in getting excited about Des Buckingham, what I'm doing is actually getting behind the sort of person that Michael Skubala is, i.e., a little bit, he thinks kind of outside the box. He's a head coach rather than a manager. And what is a head coach? What is a manager these days? A football club is compartmentalized very much. So he's going to be concentrating on working with the players. Through the course of the day, because let's face it, being honest, I've had a fair idea, since early on this morning that something was happening. I've researched him because I put him in an article a couple of weeks ago, but I didn't do the sort of deep level of research that I needed to do to satisfy myself. I'm much more comfortable now than I was at 10 o'clock when I first heard it. And that's purely because I've listened to his interviews. On the Stacey West page, there's a couple of videos on there of him talking to Leeds United players. There's some videos of him doing coaching and that sort of stuff. I've sort of had a look at some of the reaction just a minute ago while Charlie was talking from Leeds fans. Lots and lots of people saying this is a really good appointment. And people said the same about Mark Kennedy. And in that first season with Mark Kennedy, I was underawed by Mark Kennedy. I was underwhelmed to a degree. I don't mind saying that. I don't think you remember a Facebook Live from when Mark Kennedy came in. It was something that's hard to get behind. I would 100% rather have a Michael Skubala than I would a Carl Robinson, than I would a Liam Richardson, than I would a Steve Cottrell, than any of those kind of names that have been troped around. But I made no secret of who my first choice was. But I absolutely think that this isn't quite as far out of left field in terms of the style and the profile of person that we're after as people suggest. I'm going to throw that over to you, Charlie, but obviously being really careful that those that don't have the same opinion, it's it isn't right or wrong. It's the opinion, isn't it? And I just want to be careful about that.
No, absolutely. Look, I wouldn't have had Michael Skubala in my top 3, in my top 5, if you'd have asked me anything before, well, today, let's be honest. I like yourself, when the Des Buckingham rumours came out on Friday, as you could probably attest to this guy, I got very, very excited. And I went into an absolute sort of wormhole of Des Buckingham sort of stuff. And I ended up posting a bit of a thread on Twitter about it and such. And almost everything that I read about Des Buckingham and that I kind of wrote about Des Buckingham, actually, Michael Skubala is very, very similar in a lot of aspects. Somebody who has had a bit of an unconventional route to, a head coachship as Michael Skubala's now got. Somebody who typically likes to play 4 at the back. We'll go on to that a little bit later. Potentially slightly more attacking and expansive football. Yes, okay, even if that is only with the under-21s lead side at the moment. Somebody who is a really strong man manager. Somebody who likes to work with the players, somebody who, as we've said, develops the youngsters and hopefully will be able to bring them on to top quality players that, yes, at the end of the day, we can sell on. Let's let's not get kind of too arrogant about our size of club, because we do still have to be a selling club. If you just look at the finances, we lose £2 million a year as is. We have to at some point.
Everybody's a selling club. Brighton are a selling club if Chelsea comes knocking.
Yeah, well, exactly. No, exactly. And it's the sort of thing you have to do to be a sustainable model. There's the buzzword, the sustainable model for a football club, especially at this level. So
can I
actually go on?
No, go on.
So I'm actually really, really pleased with this as a managerial appointment, even if it isn't one that was necessarily on anybody's radar. Okay, maybe yours, Gaz, wasn't necessarily on anybody's radar before today. I still think it's somebody that we can get behind when you read into it.
I just want to pick up on Ben's Ben's reply there. The comment about where we were, I guess, because obviously I was facetious about being where we were, a sense of community, togetherness, passion, and pride. Now, I think there is one thing that will guarantee that, and that's winning football games. People don't guarantee that. We haven't had that togetherness since we were all clapping and singing Danny and Nicky Cowley. Why were we singing Danny and Nicky Cowley? Because they were good people, or because they were winning football games? John Schofield was a good people who was able to unite. Keith Alexander did the same, but there was people booing Keith Alexander when we weren't winning games. So my sense is a manager can never do that alone. A manager can come in and give the club a lift. Mark Kennedy did, by the way, when he first came in, because he wasn't Michael Appleton, which is something I often say, and I'm not going to get into an Appleton conversation here, because if my mate Matt Ward's watching, or if Marcus Clayson's watching, I'm going to have my balls mounted on a wall. So I'm not getting into that conversation. But what I'm saying is that whilst a person can seemingly do that, that isn't the case, in my opinion. What is the case is you come in and you win football games. Michael Skubala loses his first 6 or 7 games. There'll be people turning on him saying he hasn't united the crowd. If you win your first 6 or 7 games, there'll be more people coming through the door. Crowds have dropped, but not as significantly as people seem to think. We're averaging high 7,000s, which when you look at the number of home supporters, is somewhere around 7,1, 7,2, I think, apart from the FA Cup game, which is 400-500 occasion, maybe fewer. But bear in mind, we've just had 4 home games in a row. Before that, we've played Cheltenham and we've played Burton, who don't traditionally bring big numbers. When we start playing the bigger teams, the average crowd will go up. I don't think it's dropped a huge amount, certainly not as much as seems to be the kind of narrative. And that's for passion and pride. Ben, I know you'll agree with this. Passion and pride don't just come from the manager, it comes from the players and it comes from the supporters. We're both all passionate when we're all proud of our football club. And if we win a game, or we win a couple of games, or we get behind the manager. So I think it always annoys me when people are underwhelmed by a manager or a player coming in, as much as it does when people are waxing lyrical about how brilliant they are when there's no proof either. Do you know what I mean? We can do analysis, but to get too down or too high based on it, for me, is it's a fallacy, to be honest. Let's just look at a couple more comments if we're okay. First of all, Charlie, I've got your name there. So James Christopher says, great that Tom remains an assistant. Absolutely, yes. 100%. David Elkerton, do we think he was the board's first choice? I certainly think that he was one of the people that we identified very early on. I'm not going to second guess what the board did or didn't say. What I will say is this. I was told last week by a club insider that we would be, all being well, if we got the man we wanted, the scarf would be raised on Monday. So read from that what you will. I'm not going to say yes, we think he was, or no, I think he wasn't the first choice. My understanding, my kind of feeling is that there was perhaps a short list of 2 people and we've gone for one of them. So that's that. Any idea of a length of contract, says Dale? Not at the minute, mate, because I literally got the press release and I've only just gone live. So my apologies for that. Nate Loveridge, hello, mate. Think from board level, Skubala makes a lot of sense. Proven with youth teams, and for us to keep doing what we're doing, model wise, developing and selling on for money, we've had mixed results with. Yep, agree. And finally, for now, the Bear. Hello, the Bear. Left field, yes. A risk, probably not the Cowleys. Gooders don't want to tarnish their status they had. Never go back. They say good luck to Michael. And I think we can all say that, can't we? That it's good luck to Michael. Ben, he's doing his stuff in the background. End of 26-27 seasons, the contract. So that's what, 3.5 years, give or take. Charlie, you've done some work on his style of play, I understand, and his tactics.
I have. So first of all, I'm just going to preface this with the fact that a lot of these stats are coming from a Leeds under 21 side, because obviously that is primarily where he has been working for the sort of the past 18 months. But you can very much move a lot of that over to senior football. The play style can still be very similar. There will just be certain caveats to a lot of the things that I end up saying here. Now, first of all, typically likes to play with a 4-2-3-1. So that is obviously 4 at the back. You then have maybe 2 holding midfielders, maybe one slightly more holding, one slightly more box to box, potentially a number 10 who could then also potentially drop into like a number 8 role if sort of games permit that. Obviously, a left wing, right wing, and a striker up top. For me, it seems like there's a clear emphasis on wanting the attackers to be brave on the ball. It's something I very much noticed from watching quite a lot of the clips over this afternoon. Last season, their striker had 15 goals and 17 starts. Now, again, I understand it's Premier League 2 football, but their winger /10, he kind of played in both roles, also had 11 goals and 17 starts. So it seems like they're wanting. He's the sort of manager that wants to have his attackers to play this kind of expansive football, and they're the ones that he wants to constantly have on the ball, scoring goals. They average 2.65 goals per game and average conceding 1.45 goals per game. Now, again, there are typically more goals in under 21 football, but it is interesting that they're consistently able to outscore their opponents, even though they are conceding. Now, what does this mean for us?
No, go on. How do we look in style of play as well, rather than just set up? What sort of football does he like?
Well, this is one of the key things. Now, the wingers are huge, it seems, for him. He wants to be able to have the wingers effectively run and play expansive, wide football, rather than the more tucked-in style that we've seen recently. Is something that I've very much noticed. Now, also having the sort of number 10 in kind of a floating role, and then the striker who can occasionally kind of come back and play some sort of a false 9 role, but less likely. It actually means that somebody like a Jack Vale or a Ben House in that number 9 role is going to be absolutely perfect, because it does mean that he's going to be able to press, which it does also seem like he likes to be able to have his teams do. It means that he's going to be able to press but not feel isolated. I think we can all agree that sometimes recently, Vale, Ben House, Adelican, who's played up top some parts of this season, sometimes when we're maybe trying not to concede too much, they're pressing from the front, but they're pressing on their own. They can find themselves really isolated, and to be honest, they're just running around wasting energy. Something that actually, it seems like that isn't the case with the Michael Skubala side, because the number 10 also facilitates that.
Well, I think what I'd just say is, I think getting too hung up on how the players are going to line up on the field could be a fallacy, because I think he'll work within the kind of the squad and the framework that we've got as well.
Oh, yes.
It's the way that they play and the triggered presses. Sorry, Charlie, I don't mean to kind of
no.
You just said, because he may well do that. And if he does, I like the 4-2-3-1. But I think more it's the style that he wants to do. I think he's going to be a lot higher in the press. I think he's going to work. He has his teams work a lot harder. I watched a training video where he was working on triggers as well, which with this, and it's on YouTube. You'd have to search Michael Skubala and training or something, and he's talking about you're triggering this guy, you're there, and it was a futsal. Granted, it was futsal, but I thought it was really interesting. And he always talks, I think, about attacking football, fast attacking football, and again going back to what Ben was saying about uniting a fan base. What unites a fan base more than chances on a football field? We drew 1-1 with Port Vale on Saturday. It wasn't a terrible result. It wasn't a great performance. If we'd drawn 1-1 and we battered them in the second half, hit the post, gone wide, everyone comes away happy. You still come away with 1 point. Somebody, and I'm pretty sure it was Andy Pearson, said, all we want is bums off seats. And if you draw 1-1 and your bums off the seats, that's kind of what we want. There's a degree, I think, of that in Skubala's approach, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. And on that note, I mean, the 1-1 draw at home to Plymouth last season was one of my personal favourite home matches in a while. And it was a lot of other people's sort of highly rated matches last season. And that was still the same result as what the Port Vale game was. We still got a point, and it was still 1 goal scored, 1 goal conceded, but they were polar opposites in terms of the amount of chances and, like you say, the bums off seats. And that is something that Mark Kennedy obviously spoke about, didn't necessarily deliver. Something that Michael Skubala hasn't obviously mentioned as of yet, but it seems like it's something that he's going to want to be able to do for us. Constant attacking football, expansive football, having wingers running the channels potentially, having players constantly, like you say, triggering the press whenever there is the opportunity to. So, for example, if we were playing against, let's say, a Notts County side again, like we did or have already twice this season, they've played out from the back against us in both games, and they do it in League Two as well. But they're actually quite poor at it, I've got to be honest. They seem to make quite a lot of mistakes by doing it. Now, for me, Michael Skubala, he's the sort of manager that's going to want to be able to take advantage of that consistently, get the ball, and then immediately want to do something, create not just chances, but high quality chances as well. He wants to be able to put confidence and faith in his attackers, but not necessarily rely on individual brilliance. Instead, have an attacking unit, which is something that we hoped we were going to get this season, but it's something we've not really been able to see enough of within this current squad. And let's not forget, we've got the players to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Good. Look, so a couple of things about his personality wise, because I've spoken post Mark Kennedy that I didn't really gel with that, and again doing some research, digging on Skubala, some really interesting things about when he was beaten as the university's coach or in futsal. He would go to the opposition manager and say, "How did you beat me?" So he's a constant learner. That's come out from the quotes. There's a great Athletic article on it. If anyone's a member, subscribes to the Athletic, go and have a look at that. All about how he's kind of developed himself, how he's an arm around the player. There was a really good quote. I can't find it now because I'm actually drenched in quotes today. But a really good quote about how it will never be about him. He doesn't want the limelight. He doesn't want any of that. He wants it to be about his players. I think, again, that's really interesting because I think towards the end of our previous coach, and you always have to compare your previous coach to your kind of your current coach, but towards the end of that, I think it was the personality that became a problem. And having listened to some of the interviews from Michael, or Scoobs, as he's known apparently, so that's got some real Imptoons quality about it. But to kind of look at, I think personality is something that is going to be really vital with him. I think that he's a good man manager, but as I've said, Patrick Bamford has spoken about it as well. I'm just on Twitter, so I just want to. I'm conscious that my dinner's actually cooking because I've been waiting for an announcement. So I'm just interested in some of the stuff that Leeds fans have said. This is on Twitter, so I can't share it on the screen. But as a Leeds fan living in Lincoln, I think this is a cracking appointment for the Imps. Plays a great brand of football. Could take a couple of under-21s on loan in January. Don't think Lincoln will be disappointed. We're so close to beating the Scum away. Would have been a legend just for that. So that was when Leeds played Manchester United. Can't lie, I'm gutted for Leeds, but happy for him. All the best and thanks for everything, Scoobs. All the best to him. Big fan of him, so a bit gutted about this, but I hope he does a great job. I read some comments that when he was caretaker, one or two said perhaps wanted to get him into the job permanently, which was interesting. Just having a look down through some of the comments. So Gary Brooks, never heard of him, but doesn't mean it's not a good appointment. Is he bringing his own backroom staff? As I understand it, no. Tom Shaw is staying on as assistant manager. It wouldn't surprise me if once he's in and he has a kind of a look at what he has backstage, it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't bring somebody else in. And John Davidson says, reading Leeds Twitter replies, one comment, super attack minded, which is really interesting as well. I'm going to answer this one from Elvin Priestley. Any idea why it took so long for the appointment? I just think because we had to go through an interview process, and I alluded to this through the course of the process. I think that this is a time where you can talk to managers and you can talk to coaches. So if we'd wanted to sound out Michael Skubala 6 weeks ago, it would have been incredibly hard because we have a manager in situ. Now they have a succession plan, and there's another comment here from John Cousins Booth. What are your thoughts on Clive's messages? Interesting, he mentioned 15 people on the club's list. Yes, because I think the club have that succession plan. They've never made any kind of secret about the fact they have that. They have a succession meeting, so they'll be talking about who's next. So Michael Skubala will have been on that list. What I do think is interesting is Tom Shaw ascending to assistant to head coach temporarily. Chris Cohen coming in. Now, Nottingham Forest. you could almost say if it were a Scooby-Doo cartoon, you could almost sort of figure Scoob's figuring that out. You know.
Yeah, look, the Tom Shaw one. I'm really, really pleased with the fact that he's now moved into the assistant head role. It's something that I kind of hoped from whatever this appointment was. I was kind of praying that it was. To be honest, it's part of the reason why I was kind of hoping it wasn't Danny and Nicky. And I know that's probably a little bit too soon in this appointment to be mentioning their names, but personally, the fact that Tom Shaw has now been able to get this assistant head role, I think he's earned it. Let's not forget, yes, okay, the question, why is it taking so long? There is obviously a long process, but at the same time, in that first week, we had 2 wins and a draw. Now, of course, we'd have maybe rushed a little bit sooner to try and get a manager if we'd suddenly lost 3 games in a row and Tom Shaw actually wasn't really living up to the hype, if you like, within the club around him. But no, he proved. Well, I agree, but there would have been a lot more pressure for it anyway. So, Tom Shaw has proven himself in this kind of little interim stint. He's proven that he should get this opportunity as assistant, and I think this is a really good stepping stone for him. And then also it becomes a question of if this is a stepping stone for Scoobs, then actually we may end up having a ready-made appointment later on. Obviously, that's a little bit too soon to say, but I think Tom Shaw has definitely earned this, and I'm really pleased that he's getting this opportunity to grow in his sort of career.
So we're going to wrap this up very shortly because I have burgers cooking and I'm particularly hungry. Yeah, so
no steak.
No steak. No steak. So Charlie, just your. I mean, I'll give a final kind of comment in a minute, but just to recap your initial thoughts on Michael Skubala becoming the Lincoln City head coach.
Yeah, look, time will tell on Skubala's appointment. Let's not pretend like we all know exactly what's going to happen come Saturday, or it doesn't necessarily mean that Saturday's suddenly going to be a win. But for me, I think this is a really progressive appointment. It's an appointment that the club have clearly worked on. I think we can all trust the board. Let's not pretend like anybody has sort of bad faith in the board at this football club. So the fact that they've gone through this somewhat lengthy process, sure, but they've decided on Michael Skubala. They've also then allowed Tom Shaw to step up to assistant head coach role. I'm really pleased with the way it's gone, and hopefully the results on the pitch can continue improving as well.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Charlie. I will keep you in so that people don't just have to look at me. They can look at you as well if they want to. So yeah, it's an interesting appointment. It's the type of appointment that I thought we would make. Whether the actual name, I wasn't so sure of, but I could see it being a head coach, progressive, young, interesting background. Certainly a background of working with young players. He's got a massive start because the one thing he doesn't have is that major experience of working in a senior men's environment. He's been I suppose, in the dugout at Old Trafford as a Leeds United manager. That's pretty big, but it's not going to compare to being in the opposite dugout to the fat knacker at Stevenage that we've got to put up with on Saturday. That's a baptism of fire for him. Under 21 managers coming out of the Premier League 2, etc., have mixed results. Mark Jackson was the Leeds under 21 manager. He went to MK Dons, didn't do particularly well and left. But Kieran McKenna was the Manchester United under 21s manager. He came out and he's taken Ipswich to the next level. We're aiming for a Kieran McKenna. We're obviously not aiming for a Mark Jackson. But I don't think that any one man can be categorised by where he's come from. It would be grossly unfair. Oh, he's come out of Premier League 2, so he's this or he's that. Every single man is his own man. Every single man's different. So what you then have to strip that back and kind of take a step back. Don't look at a man. Look at a process and look at the people who have appointed him. That's the key. Because actually Liam Manning went to MK Dons and he didn't do particularly well there. But he's gone to Oxford and has now gone straight through to Bristol City. So it's horses for courses. It's who you're working for. It's who you're working with. So as a football club, does Michael Skubala, not as an individual. An individual's not going to come in and overhaul everything. That ain't going to happen. This isn't 2016. It's not Danny Cowley, Nicky Cowley needing to come in and revolutionise a football club. It's one man needing to be an important cog, but a cog in a machine. So in that respect, are we as a football club in the right position? Do we trust Clive and the board that they've been through a full process of due diligence and got the right man? People tell me that Mark Kennedy and Michael Appleton were not good appointments. I'll argue back with, well, we've had our 2 highest finishes under them for 40 years. So it's really easy to be subjective. The one thing I'd say is I think Michael Skubala is a better appointment than a Carl Robinson, a Liam Richardson, anyone else you want to pull off that entire kind of conveyor belt. I think we've got interesting times ahead. I just urge everybody to back him. I think that Lincoln City are in a really, really good place. And I don't think that we've made a bad appointment since 2016, since Danny, well, even since Danny and Nicky, not since Chris Moyes. We've made good appointments. They haven't all worked out, but there have been appointments that have had their positives. A bad appointment takes you down. We're 9th in League One. I would suggest that that's almost the highest that we've ever been for a manager to come in. I can't remember how far we dropped by the time Michael Appleton came in. It's got to be one of the best positions that Lincoln City managers come into ever, given that Bill Anderson, I think, manages all the way through the top 10. So we've never been in this better position. Have we got the right man? I can't say yes or no. Charlie can't say yes or no. You can't say yes or no. Nobody can. We'll only know that in 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 10 years' time. But what I'll say is that we've got a good man. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we've been to Stacey West. Up to 160 of you were watching this live at various points. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you very much for interacting. We're going to have our dinner now. I shall see some of you at Stevenage on Saturday. May not see much of the game given that we're going on a bus, but it's the first day of the Skubala era. And I think that all we need to say is, I'm going to do my Cornell bit now. You ready for this? Skubala. See you later.